Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Alex is a brand new graphic novel coming out from Marvel and Abrams Books. Fantastic Four, Full Circle. It comes out September 6th. It's a rainy night in Manhattan, and not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These carrion creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system. But for what purpose? And who is behind this untimely invasion? The Fantastic Four have no choice but to journey to the Negative Zone, an alien universe comprised entirely of antimatter, risking not just their own lives, but the fate of the cosmos. Fantastic Four, Full Circle is the first long-form work written and illustrated by acclaimed artist Alex Ross, who revisits a classic Lee Kirby story from the 60s and introduces the storyline for a new generation of readers. Bold, vivid colors, his trademark visual storytelling, Ross takes Marvel's first team of superheroes to places only he can illustrate. The book also features a special poster jacket with the front flap unfolding to reveal an all-new, fully painted origin story of the Fantastic Four. Again, Fantastic Four, Full Circle, out September 6th. For more details, go to AlexRossArt.com. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, always happy to welcome Scott Snyder back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, man.
It's great to see you, too. I'm sorry, I was telling you before we went live that I'm like down in our den. I was going to go out to my office, and then I'd have to drag this Ethernet cable out there, and I was just didn't have enough time after putting the 3-year-old down, but my 15-year-old had friends over, and he said he'd clean this area up, and it is not clean. So I'm like gonna keep the camera as tight as, but it's like I'm like, why are there there's like seltzer cans and soda and whatever everywhere. And anyway, so sorry for looking like I'm like crashing in my parents' house or something down below. I'm like, well, I actually have like a nice office.
Oh no, we've broadcast from there before. No, we know, yeah. Man.
This is like a giant beanbag chairs and Snorlax and microwave and whatever with like bad nachos that he made behind me. So I don't live like this.
People saying hello. Nothing makes me happier than when the crowd starts to gather and I have somebody on like Scott. This is great. Boy, I'm really sorry there's nothing to talk about as far as anything new, Scott.
I know.
Guess we're going to have to BS about Elvis for 90 minutes.
Oh, I would do that. I just straight from Graceland, man. I would do that in a second. It like took me an extra 24 plus hours to get home after an extra 18 or 12 something to get there. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was a blast.
I heard your Substack report on Memphis Comic-Con and also heading the pilgrimage to Graceland. And I love it. And I direct people to hear it. But I also am going to bug you about Elvis later in the broadcast. But right now, Jesus, there's so much to talk about as far as new books. And I mean, I was ready to talk about these three, and we certainly will. We have Demons with you and Capullo and Glapian, and you and Francis Manipul on Clear, and Francesco Francavilla and you on Night of the Ghoul. But then you guys dropped a big announcement yesterday, and that's you and Jock back together again for Book of Evil.
I know, and we have the other three that are going right now too. The Panosian and Me with Canary. It's like a horror western, and historical fiction called Barnstormers with Tula Lotay, the great Tula Lotay, and then a kind of all ages cosmic adventure called Dudley Dotson and the Forever Machine with the great Jamal Igle, who's also a good friend. So yeah, it's a lot. I know. I'm like, it's weird because I have like, you know, more books than I've ever worked on at any time, but I'm like less stressed out than I've ever been working.
That's great.
Having more fun. So it's been a blast, man. I'm really liking it.
That's wonderful, man. No, and honestly, I'm so glad that everyone has responded to all of these books, and that Best Jacket is doing as well as it is, and it gives you the opportunity to really tell stories that you've always wanted to tell. Am I right too? There's also from IDW this anthology that you're doing, Dark
Yeah,
Spaces.
IDW. Yes, that one I'm really excited. People seem to be enjoying a lot. It's that series. Mark Doyle is over at IDW doing their big originals line. He just started a couple years ago, and not even really. And he brought over a couple of my favorite people from DC, Maggie Howell and Jamie Rich, and they asked me to come over and start an anthology series where I would do very like realistic stories, no supernatural, no horror, no genre, no metaphysical stuff, just real sort of psychological lockbox stories. And so I was excited to do it and wanted to support them because I think one of the things we can talk about if you want is like the business of writing and business of comics right now. I think it's such an exciting and scary time all around. It fascinates me to get other people's opinions, but the deal that IDW put together is a really interesting creator-owned deal. And so I wanted to help them promote it because I feel like it exists in a very good space in between sort of some of the deals that are really, really sort of creator leaning, like Image, that give you all the ancillary rights and stuff. And then other deals from other companies that take sort of 50% in perpetuity of your ancillary. So I don't want to get too inside baseball unless people really want. But to me, yeah, well, what's interesting is the landscape is so different right now than it was even 5 years ago for creators.
Agreed.
Anybody
Yes.
out there who's watching is interested in comics, making comics. This information for me is the stuff that I was super hungry for when I was starting out. And it's so, just so new. All of it, the whole landscape is just so nascent, that anyway, they're doing a great line of originals. They asked me to come over and do a book and then use that as a launching pad for other people that would go under the same umbrella, up and coming talents. And so we found a couple really great people. The first one is, so that book, Wildfire, Dark Spaces. Dark Spaces is the anthology. Wildfire is this particular arc, and it's about some women who are incarcerated, and they're brought out as part of a firefighting program in the California penal system to go fight wildfires. And they're fighting this big, terrible wildfire, the Aurora fire. And one of them decides that a house up on the hill that's about to burn might have something in it they can steal. And so it's kind of a noir, a very modern, contemporary noir. And
Great.
Yeah, I'm excited. And anyway, Hayden Sherman, the co-creator on it, is fantastic. It got picked up by Universal, which I'm excited about. Yeah, for TV. And then the series, the anthology series, I'm doubly excited about because it gives us a chance, or me a chance, to introduce new voices, which is what I love doing at DC with the talent workshop. So
yes.
The first out of the gate is a book called Good Deeds, and it's by very good friend of mine and somebody who I got to know just a few years ago, who's coming up at DC, Shay Grayson, and it's really terrific book. It's like a gothic sort of horror historical book that's going to start pretty soon, and that's our first one. Really excited. Then we have another one I can't announce yet, but it's all underway. So the goal was to be able to usher in new talent to comics as well and promote this deal that I think is a really interesting and generous one for creator-owned books.
That's terrific, man. No, you've experienced all the different levels of creator-owned, starting with Vertigo and American Vampire and things like that, to of course what you're doing with Best Jacket, and I'm really thrilled that also obviously, well, you're not using it yet, Substack, to put books out. That's really through Best Jacket, and obviously you've got the relationship with Dark Horse and stuff. So no, that's terrific, and the same with James Tynan. I love that not only are you doing your own ideas, but you're opening the door for others to do stuff too.
I was just talking to James. I mean, James is like one of my absolute best friends in the world, and we're getting together to have dinner at New York Comic Con just to discuss this kind of thing. Like we did it at San Diego as well, and me and him and a couple other people, like we love sort of meeting up and talking about the state of the industry and what companies are offering, what kinds of deals, what we think that sort of temperature is for different sorts of books. And yeah, he and I are going to get together in New York and talk about talents and people that are coming up that we're excited about and all. But I can't wait. So yeah, it's a really interesting moment, John. Like, I don't know, I'm so fascinated by it, where it's just so different than 5 years ago, where there was much more stability in certain ways in the superhero business, much more stability on long running indie books. And now it's much more uncertain, I think, and much more sort of nerve wracking. And at the same time, there are all these different sort of opportunities for more short term work, but more work. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So it's really similar when I was working in TV on Witches, which, you know, like here's hoping to Elvis that it will like go through, but we find out in like a month and change.
Awesome.
If they greenlight it. I know we're at the end of October, early November, but all the materials are like in. But working in that room, it was so interesting because it's something that you heard echoed in other medium, in TV as well, that it's like a moment where, you know, writers out there, for example, they don't have the same security they used to have with cable, with residuals from cable, where they'd have a 24 episode commitment.
Yes.
Now it's all streaming. So they have 6 episodes, 8 episodes, but there's just way more work. So they're always working, but there's less certainty. They have more ability to jump from company to company, show to show, more opportunity to show run things, it's the same in comics. It's like, you have more companies to publish from it with, more ways of publishing your book, more ways of making money that you didn't have before through direct reach outs to fans, kickstarting, making merchandise that's your own, going to conventions, doing exclusive, like all kinds of stuff that didn't exist.
Yeah.
But you don't have the kind of same hunger for long-term contracts at DC or Marvel. You don't have the same, like, you know, appetite as broadly for long running ongoing indie series. Like everyone, you get a good, you know, a hit, amazing, but it's harder to kind of pierce the veil and have we lucked out with like Noctara or something like that. But like, there's not room for me, for example, to do 2 of those at once. You know what I mean?
I do. And yeah, you're right. No, man. And I'm sure you felt this way, especially as a creator, when COVID hit and lockdown happened, and a lot of the smaller companies, well, even Marvel and DC, pencils down and all that stuff. And as you say too, not only a long run, but frankly, security. That a lot of times an exclusive contract will give you, insurance and the things that as we get older are as important as wow, I'm on an awesome book, or they're letting me write Justice League or Batman or, you know, whatever and everything. So no, I hear you, man.
It's that, but it's such a, you know what I'm saying? It's such an interesting inflection point in comics, like this transitional fluid moment where nobody knows, there's no rules anymore. It's kind of the Wild West about like how you make your career. And that's exciting. I think it gives creators more control. There's more weird money coming in, like video games asking people to do stuff, and Substack and venture capital money and like odd things to take advantage of. But there's less like day job sort of mentality of being able to say, I work at DC and I'm there, I know I'll be there 2 years and have this many books, and that stuff is really rare now. So it's, you know, I'm lucky in that I'm in a pretty stable position. You know, in general, I'm always curious to hear what it's like for people coming up, and they seem to feel that way, that it's scary and there's less stability, but they're excited about there being sort of more opportunity, more varieties of ways of making your career your own.
Absolutely, man. And it's interesting to watch the various creators and how they're addressing this. I mean, what you're doing with Best Jacket, what Brubaker and Sean Phillips are doing with their graphic novels, and how they're releasing things. No, it's all different. And as you say, these other publishers that have also emerged. But you know, I want to remind everybody that one of the great things about the new books that you've got coming out this month through Comixology Originals and stuff, you know, they are, if you've got an Amazon Prime account, you've got access to these books. And you can read them, and that's how I've been reading Flyboys and Canary and, you know, my favorite Best Jacket stuff. So
thanks, man. Move this way. I'm like, I feel like
I like it.
That's right. Enough that I can
be comfortable. It's all right, man. Strap in.
I feel like it's just like, I mean, for me, it's just like the idea of being able to do something that allowed people to get all the books for, you know, reasonable amount of money during the pandemic was exciting. So I feel like we talked about this. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself too much, but like the goal with the Comixology deal, and you know, we could talk about Book of Evil in a minute too, because I'm super excited about it. But
Yeah.
the goal of doing this is the 7th of 8 books that I'm doing over there, with some exciting announcements at New York about some stuff with them
Cool.
upcoming. But doing that many books, the exciting thing was like essentially when the pandemic hit, you know, like a lot of my friends in comics, we were all didn't know what to do. You know, I mean, not even for me, it was, I think I'm in a position where it was less about how do I make sure I can make enough money? Because there are enough levers to pull when you get established,
Sure.
to the degree that I'm lucky enough to be at, where it's not like, oh my God, my career is going to collapse. It's more about like, well, how do I'm going to, you know, it's a rough time. How do I ensure for the creators I work with that I'll have enough money to pay for the books we want to do creatively?
Yeah.
And also, how do I create a system for myself creatively that's sort of hedged against this kind of volatility, you know, where how do you
Yes.
diversify and say, well, I want to have books not just tied only to DC or only to one company, where, you know, everywhere you go now is volatile. Like when I was at DC, you know, I started there and it was DC, and then they got bought by Warner, which was okay, you know, but then they moved to the West Coast, and then Warner get bought by AT&T, and then Discovery Plus. And by the end of the time I was there, it was so much like, you know, it takes a year to initiate the things that those big bosses at those big companies want you to start to do. And sometimes you're shielded from it. Like I never had to do things that I felt were against, you know, what I wanted to do there, but
Okay.
my bosses did. You know, I like, you hear things coming down, there has to be more emphasis on this stuff for merchandise, this stuff for characters in movies, this stuff for, and by the time
Yeah.
you do it, you're bought by somebody else. And the point I'm trying to make is just that having all your eggs in any one basket, that was what the pandemic really sort of made me fearful of, and said, even though I wasn't worried about losing my career, it was more like, you've got to start to spread out and create sort of a system for yourself where the things you want to do that you love doing, these books, they're protected somehow they're shielded, because you have enough things going on in enough places that you're never going to have to go to an artist and say, I can't pay you enough, you know? So with Comixology, they were great. They were like, look, we're really looking to build volume and to build a library that we can say to people, look, if you, for one price, for this subscription price, you can come over and read everything.
Yep.
And that was really exciting to me, especially at a time when their shipping chain was broken from COVID, when, you know, I didn't want to gouge people for money.
Yeah.
And it felt like, okay, you know what, this is a great system. And I believe in it. I really believe deep down that the closer we move to at least some portion of the comic industry being subscription, digital, physical, collectible, the better off we're going to be. You know, I think that it'll help stores. I think all of it, like, you know, on the books that are really direct market friendly, like we have Demons, we still sold 90,000 of #1 after it was out digitally. But it allows people that, you know, don't want to pay $5 per issue for everything I'm doing all the time, to say, hey, I'm going to pay $5 a month and get 7 books by him and his co-creators. And
Yep.
that felt like, you know, something that I could get behind. And then if you want to buy the collectible that has the script and the this and the designs and extra content, great. If you don't, no worries, you know, that's good. It's good either way. And then to also have like a book or two at Image that in the direct market, like Noctara, you know, and that's there, and that has a whole different system of how it makes money for the whole team, you know, like
Yeah.
that and other things. And then have something like Substack where I get to teach, and that's all subscription based. So the more people that sign up for the class, the you know, the better off it does. And having all those different legs of the stool right now for me, it's such an interesting, it's such a, I feel so deeply grateful to fans, because it gives me more and more creative freedom, and the reward for me, or the thing that I'm trying really hard to do, and you know, anyone that knows me will hopefully vouch for me in this regard, is to pay it forward by really trying things that are creatively exciting and challenging for me and push me in directions that aren't necessarily as safe, and try and be the best writer and most exciting writer I can be for my co-creators and for fans in that regard. You know, that's the kind of way I could say thank you. I think the best is to, you know, try and grow and do new things on the page. So that's why books like Book of Evil are so fun. You know, for me, it's totally different than anything I've done. So,
Dude, I hear you. And again, I do think you're stretching yourself in great creative directions. And man, people already are asking interesting questions. And I'm gonna conflate a couple of them
yeah.
because people were saying, what is it about a given idea that typically compels you to run with it and say, yes, this is the one that needs to see print? First of all, that was Andrew Wyatt who said that.
Well, I mean, for me, I think, you know, typically something will just kind of become like almost like an itch at the back of my brain that I can't let go of. So I'll give you an example. Like my one of the books that we're working on now, like well, I'll say Book of Evil, because why not, right? So
yeah, let's talk about it. Sure.
all right. So Book of Evil, the way that it came to be was it's a couple of years ago the idea came to me, and it's kind of the culmination I was saying in that post, and I should have mentioned
your Substack post. Yes.
I can't believe I didn't think to mention we were doing this tonight in that post, John. I'm really sorry.
Buddy. Oh, no. It's all good, man. Don't worry about it. I appreciate that, but it's cool.
I wasn't going to do a post today. And then Tyler, my amazing assistant, was like, do a post. And I was like, so I did one quickly and forgot to mention this, which was
That's
ridiculous.
all right, man. Tomorrow, next week or whatever. Just let people know. I'll send you the links.
Yeah, and I'll post all about it. But
you're a good man. It's cool.
So Book of Evil, like the way that it started the culmination, the last 5 years or so, I think the main theme in my writing, you know, has been this kind of examination of human nature, you know, for me, like the things that keep me up at night about whether or not we're designed to be cruel and selfish, and that goodness or collectivism or the things that have kind of, you know, are thought of as this kind of civilized progress or this climb up a slope are just fallacies, and that it's all misguided, and ultimately we're designed to be selfish and predatory. And, you know, there are obvious reasons for that in the zeitgeist and from 2016 to now, and the kind of the willingness with which people are moved towards cruelty and solipsism and all of that. And so that theme has been kind of, you know, explored in different ways, from the Batman Who Laughs and Justice League. And it's something I've touched on before, but this book is kind of the purest expression of that. And it comes from this idea where back when I was working on the Black Mirror, even I had to do this research about whether or not that book, you know, that has this guy, James Jr., who's the son of Jim Gordon. And he claims that he was a sociopath, but he found a medicine that makes him better, kind of blocker. Yes. And creates empathy in him. And ever since then, that idea in the back of my head about this kind of neurological difference between someone who's a straight psychopath and someone who's kind of a conventionally functioning person, normal neurology, has always been
moral code. They live by a moral code versus
by a moral code. And so when I was doing the Batman Who Laughs, I got really into this idea that he kept trumpeting, which is we're designed to win. That's it. And that he's the newest form of evolution, and that he is the Batman that was always meant to be, that we're designed to win and nothing else.
Yes.
I started thinking, I'm like, well, what if everybody felt that way? And then I'm like, well, what if the majority of people started being born psychopaths? What if more and more and more people? Because it was that notion that, like, clearly some of these politicians have to be sociopaths, at least, to be so hypocritical, to be so shitty, and to be so self-serving. You have to have, I don't know how you sleep at night. So is that maybe there are more sociopaths? And then it's okay, well, maybe what if more and more are born? All right, well, what if 90+% of the world are suddenly born sociopaths and no one knows why? Okay, that stays. And then I'm like, okay, that I know, I have a story, right? So I have a hook. And I'm like, I want to do this story. That was the thing in Book of Evil. And then it becomes, the way I unpack it is to say, what's really exciting to me about that idea is that the post-apocalyptic world of killers and that stuff, because you can take that idea and run like 100 ways, right? It could be a story like The Road, where it's like what happened to a destroyed world where everybody's running around killing each other. It could be a zombie type flick. It could be something that's in the moments as all of this is happening, the chaos that about it could be about a parent waiting to see if their child presents one way or another and be an extremely intense, almost theatrical, like a play story, and all those things are exciting to me in different ways. But I was like, what? Why is this interesting? And I'm like, because I'm interested in the idea of what it's like as a kid to grow up in an environment where adults are just, are horrible. And it's stratified in a way that is an exaggeration of the way I worry my kids or feel about the world. It interests me from an angle where my kids are coming up in a time where it feels, at least in terms of my growing up, not historically, there are so many more times that, are horrifying, and from people from different demographics that have been felt way more hopeless than now.
Sure.
But that feel for my children way less hopeful than the time in which I grew up. And things seem more polarized, volatile, divisive, violent, everything. And so I was like, well, I want to tell it from the point of view of a kid growing up in this world. Okay, well, what if kids present one way or another when they hit adolescence? And so it would be from the point of view of a 12 or 13-year-old kid who's just on the cusp of either becoming human, as they call it in this world, which is psychopath, or becoming a sub, which is a subhuman, which is the way we are now. If you have a conscience, and the slang they use for people in that world is animals. They just call it, they're people and they're animals, and the animals they keep in a place they nickname the zoo, and it's this massive complex that's like the size of a small city and you really don't see a lot of people with consciences. I wanted to keep it spooky, where they're kept for hard labor and breeding, and that's it. They get the worst jobs and nothing else. And the irony of this society is that it's running great for everybody that's a sociopath and humans. The city is clean and gleaming, and they walk around. They don't kill everybody. They go about their business just fine. But they have rules whereby they can do these terrible things if they want. If a sub or an animal steps out of line, or they get tickets, like parking tickets, essentially for transgressing and letting their impulses get the best of them in different ways. So it's a really terrifying environment for a kid to grow up in, where there's no teachers, there's no parents. Those words even are in a glossary of things that like don't exist anymore, because the book is written as a journal from the point of view of this kid who's the narrator. His name is Homer, given to him by his older brother when they found an old book of poetry, of poets, brought back by one of the friends to the place where all the kids live in this slum. And they just pick names out of it. And so they're all named after poets that they found descriptions of. They never read the poems, but
So Homer and his brother, they're subs.
Well, until you turn 14 or 15, you're known as an MB, embryonic, a kid, and
okay,
children.
Sure. So like a Logan's Run
kids,
kind of vibe. I'm with you. Yeah.
They all live in this section of the city called the Yoke, and it's just this slum that the kids live in, and nobody cares about them. They do work. They do sort of internships, like work, and they're allowed to go out to train. And then once they present one way or another, they're sort of taken in by the main of society, or they're sent to the zoo to be hard labor if they're a sub, essentially. So these kids are all like nearing the age when they're going to go one way or another, and you don't know which they're going to become. They don't know which they're going to become, but they're very close. And until you turn that way, you're an empathetic, compassionate kid. You're just a kid, and then the neurology kind of changes over the course of a few days as you hit adolescence, and then you become human, as they call psychopathic, or that. And so that's how I decide on the book. I want to tell it from the point of view of a kid, because my real interest in this is to write something that expresses hope when things feel very hopeless, from the point of view of a young character who's a sort of adult, the adult population of the world in which they live has completely let them down and is preying on them and is horrible. So that is exciting to me, because I feel in a lot of ways my kids are growing up at a time when, we've let them down in some way. And so it has a third rail kind of nerve for me that feels powerful, as opposed to the story of a guy who's I thought about like, well, what if I tell it from the point of view of a guy who's hiding in this world, who has a conscience, but is faking it. And he's trying to, an adult, like a man, an adult man. And then I was like, oh, well, what if I do the really tiny one about just a woman who's waiting to see if her child goes one way or another? And I was like, I like it, but it's too small. And then this one fit. And then the third decision. So the first thing is like, what is the hook? What comes to you as the kind of like, what's the idea and why does it matter to you? So it's like that. Why do I like this thing? Well, I like it. What if all these people are born psychopaths? I like it because it touches on something I worry about. Okay. Second thing is, well, what's the angle I'm taking on it that allows me to get to that material in the most potent and resonant way for myself? Okay. Doing it from the point of view of a kid that's this age, because that's what's on my mind all the time about what it would be like to grow up in a really less hopeful time. Okay. Third decision. How do you tell it? What's the format? Who's my co-creator? I've been talking to Jock about the idea. He loved the idea. Okay, well, Jock's the co-creator. Well, then you know what? Maybe we try something different. Like, what if the book itself, I want it to feel claustrophobic. I want it to feel like you're a kid in this world and you don't know anything because you're not taught. There's no teachers. So you don't know what exists outside your little city. You don't know if there is an America. You don't know if there's a Europe. You don't know what it is. They don't teach you anything. So what if we do it as a prose book where it's dark and it's closed and it reads like a journal that you picked up and it's spot illustrations of the things that Homer draws for you. And I was like, that's the right format for the feel. At least, I can completely fuck it up. It's not like it's not going to be, it could be awful, but I love it.
Yeah, I know.
It's definitely like, I stand by this book 1,000,000% as like one of my favorite things I've ever done. And I really love it. So anyway, that's the way I kind of go about taking an idea from the very beginning and deciding how to make it. It's, why does it matter to me? Okay, that's why. Well, how do I get at that material? Decision 2, tell it from Homer's point of view the most. How do I get at that material story-wise the most piercingly? Decision 3, what's the format in which you tell it? What's the aesthetic decisions you're making? Who's your co-creator on the book? What's going to give it that most, that sort of most powerful impact that way? What's the truest form it can take? So that's my process. That's every book is that process. Sometimes they come from an idea from talking with a co-creator. Just like I've said, I think I said this to you last time I was on, but like, Clear, for example, is a book that came from me and Francis talking about our fears for our kids in a specific way about, he was staying in this house with me in this house with his family for a week after a con right before the pandemic. And we were talking about how shitty it is sometimes that our kids are so encouraged constantly by the algorithms they encounter to just like more of the same, expose them to pursue more of what they already like. Oh, you like this? Well, here's more of it, from everything from music and Spotify to politics. And so that's where Clear came from, was us talking back and forth. Well, let's do a story about that. Well, what would that look like? How do you get at that again? How do you get at that the most aggressively? Well, sci-fi. What's the world like? It's where everybody's fallen into those bubbles and they're embraced. Okay, well, how do you tell what's the, that? And then it's that. So it's always about, if you're out there wondering like how to write, not that my way is the way to do it, but one piece of advice I give you from teaching and having good teachers in the past is figure out the way, once you have an idea, figure out the question you ask yourself. And this is the way, I taught my class, James Tynan was in it. Everybody that's come up knows this about me. I try and teach them, how do you tell your story in the most brutal, honest way for you? And that doesn't mean it always has to be the most heart-wrenching material. If you're telling an epic fantasy, then how do you do that on the most grand scale? How do you create a story that's going to take you into the most landscapes in your world and show the breadth of the whole imaginary sort of ecosystem of it? Each thing is, how do you tell a story that's true to that thing the most you can?
Anyway. I get it, man. Yeah. No, I hope the comments that I'm putting up that are obviously loving what you're saying and stuff isn't distracting you from what you're saying. Oh, that's so funny, buddy. I see you're guzzling Coke Zero.
I love Coke Zero.
So do I, but I got to tell you, man, I've been drinking because sometimes my store is out, and I tried Pepsi Zero. I'm shocked, but I'm like, Pepsi Zero is good. It really is.
Because Diet Pepsi is like my least favorite thing. I'm like a child of Tab. where my was always on those diets like growing up, and my grandmother on his side had like a fridge of Tab, which is like,
hilarious.
for those of you who are too young, it was up there with like Tang as like one of those like space kind of like,
Yes, Tab.
you know, and like it, I don't know, you can't find. I'm just like went extinct, and I'm sure it had like all kinds of horrible
Well,
chemicals.
yes, saccharin was the sugar substitute of Tab, and I
Well,
believe that saccharin, like they found that forms of cancer happen if you drank too much Tab. So yeah,
well,
Tab went away.
well, yeah, I probably had already drank too much Tab, but I love Tab. Tab was my thing, but Coke Zero,
No,
yeah, I love it.
hey,
My wife, she's always after me to stop. Good, but I'm as I get older, I'm trying to be healthier. I drink a lot
sure.
less than I used to. That was a big move for me. Like, I now have a much stricter policy with myself about not having
That's
any
good, Scott.
drinks during the week. I like went to San Diego this year and proved to I was like, you know what, I'm only gonna have a drink when I'm at my own the party for myself. I'll have one drink, or whatever, and that. And so, yeah, I have my vices. My Coke Zero is definitely up there, but
That's all right, man. No, that's totally fine. Hilarious. Yeah, Michael Evans says Tab, Coke Zero, the Breakfast of Champions. Actually, a nostalgia guy that I follow on Twitter put up an ad for Carnation's breakfast drink. And dude, I was that generation that my parents passed away. So the people that raised me were real knuckleheads. It's like, oh, do you want ding dongs for breakfast? Give them ding dongs. I mean, honestly, the worst junk food and processed food. So no, I am the poster child of don't let this happen to you. And you're not doing that, so you're doing good, man.
I'm trying. My kids, I'm like I like hide it from them, but they're funny.
It's hard.
Yeah, I know. They're like my wife is great about like trying to keep them healthier than me. So
let's get this, because truly so many people do want to talk about the new books.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm not surprised that Magic K is asking. You said you won't have any DC projects for 2022. What about 2023?
I don't know. I'm not trying to be coy. I'm honestly, I'll be like really transparent. I shouldn't even say this shit, but I'll say it. I get approached by DC and Marvel and other companies to do licensed stuff.
Sure.
No big secret. And I kind of weigh it. I'm weighing it really carefully. That's all. Like, I love the people at DC and I know them all really well, Marie and everyone. And I care deeply about that company, both in terms of the people there and about the characters and the fans. And I have a lot of love for that whole, I don't know how to express, because it's the characters above all and the fans, but it's the people at that physical place too,
sure,
that I love, that are making the comics and the creators involved there. And so I'm definitely talking to them. Like, I'm in discussion with them about doing something, but the way that I feel about it is that there's no reason for me to, the things I get nervous about, like, I don't want to step on people's toes. Like, there's a lot of really good work going on over there.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to come in like another creator. I'm just going to be upfront. Like, there were times at DC over those years that were not easy, between I got along with my bosses and I really didn't get along with them sometimes. And I had knockdown, drag out fights with Dan and with Jeff and with other people there at times for lots of different reasons. And I always tried to really stick to the things I believed in with that, and was willing to, get fired or all that stuff. And sometimes I was overboard and sometimes they were, and all of that. But ultimately, I wasn't as careful as I could have been, I think, at times, about sort of thinking about the collateral damage from those arguments, like, and coming in and saying, I want to do this thing that you promised we could do, like metal or something. And you said we could do it. And then they'd be like, well, you can't do it the way you said. And I, and they were being bad about it. Was like, yes, like we had every right, me and everyone on the team, to be like, and these fights weren't just it happened a lot, being like, you promised this and I have it in writing, and you're not gonna back down, because this matters to me and I have commitments to everybody on this team and that. But sometimes those fights, you don't realize you win them and you're like, great, now me and this whole team of people get to do this story, and it creates work for people that you want, whatever. But there's also damage in that sometimes, where it's like, well, people that had been unfairly promised stuff, if you lost the battle in that situation, don't get to do that work. Stuff you weren't even aware of, that way. And a creator mentioned it to me, a friend of mine. I think it was, it was Rob Venditti. I was having a conversation with him, and we were just talking about doing stuff. It was about a book at DC, and he was like, I just want you to know that sometimes it feels like you and these other guys are, it's like kaijus at the company, like clashing over things, and you're not seeing some of the sort of the destruction around that. Things get,
Yes.
and it's not, and maybe I'm going too inside baseball with this, but those last years made me very, very sensitive about, I don't know, just about being a good player, like coming back and being a good player. And look, on my kids, like, I'm very proud of the way I behaved at DC. With, I certainly made my mistakes, but this isn't like some mea culpa that I was an asshole there. I don't think I was. I just mean, I could have been a lot more sort of careful, or thinking about people outside the circle of people within the things that I was working on, and that extended off into 20, 30 people of all different sort of branches of creators and stuff. So it wasn't like me and two guys. It was like, there was a whole, like with death metal, there were people who were up and coming creators. It was their first anthology and things, people that had been my students, like everything. So when those things get stepped on, all you see is, you're doing things to the people I promised work and this stuff that. So anyway, this is all of this is suffice it to say that if I came back, I'm not particularly interested in doing a small book. I don't really want to come in and do like a black label thing.
Okay.
I would want to come in and really do something, like really come in and be like, be part of something more seismic, and be like, because I'm a big believer that, like, some of my, like, even the people that I really fought with, like, and who I have a lot of love for, like Dan, and I think a lot of creators would echo this, for all of the kinds of ups and downs, there was an understanding at times that something needed to happen, and they weren't afraid to kind of shake things up. And the problem was sometimes the execution in that. And I think trusting and delegating to creators a little bit more about, like, how to get everybody to turn their head and say, what the hell's happening over there? While executing a story that would satisfy people, but challenge them. That was the issue. But the understanding, I think, at the company in those years, that you needed to do something to, like, get people to be like, wow, that's epic. What's happening? Like, I got to see that. That's awesome. Like,
yes,
that, as opposed to my worry about superhero comics in general sometimes is that it's becoming too, like, sort of fractured, where people are in different neighborhoods all the time. And this can be a really good thing too. So this isn't like, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say, and other people, honestly, because I think I don't know what's the right thing. That's really what it is, John. Is like,
I understand, Scott. Yeah.
In my day, and what I hear from the retailers that are my friends here, the three shops that I go to a lot, and they're modern, they're really robust shops.
Okay.
And Midtown and that stuff too,
Yeah.
That as much as they're having books sometimes siloed can create a really great creative freedom for those books, that eventually sometimes also the fractured nature of the sort of collective space, like, so that things don't have one continuity or one sense of kind of universe anymore.
Yes.
Begins to kind of hurt the overall readership, because ultimately, even if things go off, they come back for a story. But when they go off and never come back, those things might be special in their own right, but as disconnected, they start to wither in some ways eventually, sales wise. And that when there isn't kind of a trunk that's like feeding everything in a different way, even if those branches are very far out, at times there can be sort of a eventual disconnect from fans. So even though that's the way we consume so much entertainment now in other medium, and I think we become used to it, so then comics reflects it, like, oh, well, I can pick all of these different shows and I don't need to have them connected to each other.
That's right.
The problem with superhero comics with that is yes, it's great to have some like that, Black Label books and books that are, really functioning in their own sphere. But even the ones that did like Gotham Central back in the day, they eventually also reflected things that were happening in the universe, and sometimes to ill effect, but they were understood to be part of a connected world. And every once in a while, having everybody come together to be like, we're all part of this universe, and to refresh the ideological sort of initiatives of that universe, I think is important. Like, I think it's important. And maybe I'm just an old curmudgeonly person, but I really believe in that idea of like, I loved when we did like New 52 for all its problems. I love when we did a Rebirth for all its problems. I love when
I
we
loved
did
Rebirth.
I love when we did death metal, and it was like,
Yes.
it was more measured version of that. But the idea of the books coming together, even if they can go back out and exist, to say, you know what DC is about at this moment, this thing, like this idea. And
Sure.
now everyone go forward and kind of do their own books, have their own space, do their own thing. But that kind of, with death metal,
I hear you, man.
I believed really deeply in that message, of death metal that was, especially because we were building it during the pandemic, and that whole Sergeant Rock kind of stuff in it was,
Yes.
the idea was, it doesn't serve anyone just kind of going back and forth about what stories matter, who's a real fan, who's not a fan, who's this, who's that.
Yeah.
What this should be continuity, that shouldn't be, comics should be this, they shouldn't be that. Like, all of that stuff, especially when you're facing down the sort of hardships that we were facing at that moment, felt moot. And it's about, how do you create the biggest tent possible, where the stories that you all love, they all matter. They're all in it. Everything matters. Everything counts. And that was the message of death metal, was Wonder Woman creating a continuity where everything happened. And yet,
Yes.
going forward from that point, now we can move past it, not address it again, and say, let's do some cool things that challenge readers a little bit, but also things that honor the past. How do you always try and balance those? And
balance is key. Yes. I'm sorry.
so,
Please keep going.
no, and I'm just saying, I think that after a few years now with DC, with all of its shining spots, and there's so many great things happening
Yes.
right now that I love, like books that I think are fantastic. I don't think that it's a bad idea at some point, post Dark Crisis, in some way, to have some kind of like, we're about this and this is what we're doing, and then you go back out. So those are the things that I get excited about at DC,
Sure.
more than like, I have so many of my own things right now that I don't know that I'd be really dying to come back at this point. In the future, I'm sure I would be, but to do a book like Green Lantern or something like that, that's not really where my heart's at. But coming back to sort of say, I'd love to be a part of something, even if a supportive role and not a lead role, in
Something big.
Something big that says, like, this is what we are for 2023 or 2024. That gets exciting to me, because it's like investing in what you believe in the company and the characters and the fans. So you know what I mean? And that's like Marvel. If I went to Marvel, I think I would love to just get I haven't used any of those characters, and I haven't earned the cred to come over there and be like, let me do a big event. So I would be more about like, building, I think, building trust with the readers that I could do it, and working on a character like, a Captain America or Wolverine or Punisher or someone like that, and build out from there.
Let me unpack some of the stuff you said, because I'm really, as always, Scott, I truly appreciate that we have these kind of conversations, and that you are as candid as you are about your feelings about things like this. And I think it allows people to understand what you're doing and why you're not jumping right back to DC and stuff. What you said about other writers and artists, that unfortunately when a big idea comes, it may cancel their ideas. You're not the first person to tell me that. Both A-list, and you'll forgive me for measuring writers and artists and stuff, but a lot of people will get their way. And I know from background and talking to a lot of writers and artists, all ends of the spectrum, it's like, oh, I really wanted to do Hero X, but creator Y had a different plan, and that screwed my book and stuff. And it happens at both companies, both of the big two. And also, I do think it's interesting that you want to come back and do something big. I got to say, as I'm the generation before yours. I like that it is diverse. I respect what stores might be telling you and your point of view, that it's great to come back for a big event. I just want to see him spaced out a little bit more.
Oh, I agree.
And in the 70s, I mean, I was very comfortable reading Booster Gold and Justice League and Metamorpho stories when they pop up or whatever. And I knew they were all part of the same universe, but they were all just kind of doing their own things.
Oh, and
that's why I enjoy Black Label right now, and the individual identities of the books. Again,
totally.
That's just me, man. That's just me.
Oh,
and,
no.
And by the way, I'm an old fart. So
no. To be 100% clear, like I completely agree with that. What I'm saying is, I think that every now and then, it's good for the books to kind of like to acknowledge that they're part of the same universe, even if it's literally like, you remember in like, it can be like the sky looks the same because the sky's on fire and a bunch
of crisis, red skies.
Right. But what I'm trying to say is, I think sometimes lately in superhero comics, you can wind up with continuities and things that are so disparate from each other happening in the main thing, that it's nice, even if those are totally possible and completely congruent, to have something that reminds everybody you're all in it together in some way. That's all. And what I'm not trying to do is come back and be like, everything needs to be uniform in any way, or everything needs to bow to a big story. We didn't do that with death metal either. We let everything kind of, but it was more like, I would love to be a part of something if they, would have me and not even in I could literally consult or something, like not even be the
lead writer. Be part of the team.
There's tons of writers. I would just be in there to be like, great job. How can I support you? It's not like I need to take the lead with it. But what I'm trying to say is, to go back to DC at this point, I would want to be part of something really cool and big. That's all I mean. And that ultimately, I think that those things are healthy and fun to have happen periodically in DC. And that's why it's not like, no, there shouldn't be a massive event or that kind of thing every year even, or whatever. But those are the kinds of things I would love to be in a room collaborating with everybody. And even if I'm supporting someone else's idea that they're doing, but to be a part of something like that, I love those rooms. That what I'm saying, I loved being a part of events, whether I was leading them or not, that had a point of view and we're saying, this is what the company is kind of going for the next couple of years, if I believed in that message. And, getting to collaborate with all these different people to create a kind of shared universe for a moment. And then going back and having plenty of room to do everything that you want. And the books can be as disparate and different as possible. So again, nothing is like superhero books should be this and at all. The opposite. Believe me, like the whole doing the class, like the writer's workshop, the whole purpose of that class at DC was to encourage people coming in with new voices and new talent, not to curb the things they wanted to say at all, but to understand that they had a place at DC and that the characters, they could find a place within the DC universe that was organic to the kinds of things they wanted to say, whether it was on a big bombastic book or on a smaller book, given their comfort level, and to be able to tell those stories in a way that were fit holistically with what they wanted to do. So none of this is like, how do we make the books more consistent or uniform? I would like to be part of something that is kind of tectonic, and it's like, that. Those are things that excite me, because I love the moments when things come to say, DC is proud to be this right now for a little while, and its messaging is this. And if I believe in that thing, I like being a part of those. So that's what I mean. You know what I mean? So again, it didn't seem like I was saying that the books right now are all fractured and there's and the continuity needs to control them. It's not that at all.
No, I understand, Scott. And then also another thing that you said that I also want to point out to people, and you basically implied this, even when you got your way, the struggle to get your way can be very crippling or exhausting. Because again, Scott, I've suffered these things in radio as well. You've got a clear vision of what you want to do. You are promised that vision. Things get compromised. You're working for other people. In the case of Best Jacket, this is your company. You and your collaborators are able, with a very clear vision of this is what we're doing. And you don't have to worry about an editor-in-chief or a publisher telling you, but we need you to change it a little. No. And I'm sure it's incredibly gratifying And also, after coming through the conflicts and the successes and failures that you had at DC, you deserve a break, man. And
Yeah.
truly, anybody in that position deserves that kind of break.
That's really what it. By the end, it was grinding me down to a place that I felt was getting like just too much. My wife was just like, "You're stressed all the time." And again, not throwing shade. I mean, I understand the pressure that my bosses were under because of
Right.
what we were talking about earlier. Like they had new bosses, they didn't know what they were supposed to do for those
Right.
bosses. That environment just creates this kind of panic all the time, and kind
Yes.
of leads to like changing direction constantly. And when you're trying to tell a story over 6 or 7 months that you really are passionate about, and again, like at that point by the end, I mean, there were so many people attached to it. Like to give you an example, we had multiple anthologies, and in those anthologies was the first work by a bunch of students of mine from that workshop, from
Yes.
that had really exciting new voices. And
Yeah.
when they were like, we're actually not going to do any anthologies, that's what I'm saying is like, you're like, that I can't, no. Or they say to you, we're taking Wally West out of the event and it's already drawn in. And I'm like, Wally West is kind of the thing that, is about the continuity. We need that. Well, we can't have him because he's in this other book. Well, but you told me it's already drawn. You're going to have to pull up the book. And it's Christmas Eve. We're having this argument. I'm like, why am I getting a call from you? That's what I'm talking about. So you get into these situations where you're like, I will not let that happen. That not because me, my pride, my whatever, but because the entire system of like the story is ruined with, sometimes it's a creative thing like that, where like the story is ruined if you take that out about everything it's about and what it means. But B, like when you do another change, like, well, you can't have crossovers, and you're like, but you've already promised work to all these people that are having crossovers, that, and then you're like, there are all these different fights, and what you don't realize is like by saying you promised me this Wally West thing, they probably already promised a book of Wally West stuff to someone now who you don't know about, who's going to get
right.
And I never know that, like that particular situation, it didn't happen, but I'm giving you an example of the kinds of things that happen, and that stress of like,
it's you're a human being. You certainly feel for the people that are not getting to tell their story because the editors are acquiescing, or the reverse of that. And that's what, dude, seriously, believe me, that's why podcasting to me is so much more comfortable and stress-free from working for a broadcast partner, because again, there are other expectations, and that's why it's great. And also, again, the experimentation you're showing in these books, the themes and the things that you get to do, that's great. That's great. Like I said, and you've like, for instance, mentioning Book of Evil, that it's prose with spot illustration and stuff. Well, you came from short stories. You've come from prose. And even AD was a good example of a combination of prose and comics and stuff. And I think it's great that you are, again, I don't know what DC's attitude would be. I mean, I certainly know they have their publishing deals with prose companies to take Batman and the other creators and make novels and things like that. But yeah, I get it, and I appreciate I appreciate where you're coming from on this stuff.
It's just kind of like right now, I just get to make my own stuff with co-creators that inspire me to be better than I would be, otherwise entirely, both as people a lot of the time and as co-creators, and just to make whatever we want, and make things that we care about without any of that pressure. And, talking to people at Marvel and DC, like, if you're interested in writing at those places, I mean, the thing is, it's the best job in the world to get to work on those characters, and you meet incredible creators on all these different levels. And I'm not trying to paint it as this negative experience, because it's it's truly like one of the great joys and thrills and honors of my life to get to do.
Sure.
But there isn't anyone that does it that won't tell you that, let's say you have like a pie chart of the energy that you have in your life, like, and the creative energy is like, you have this much, and then the energy for the rest of your life, you have like, half and half. When you're working at a company where there's a whole sort of convincing a bunch of, of people above you, and that you want to do a story, and then finding out if you can, and then all of the kind of changes that can happen along the way, especially in the environment as it is now with all of these kind of partner companies and boss companies. You have like this creative energy gets to that, and then you like, when I was talking to Josh Williamson and other people, we all say the same thing. It's like you have room for like it. For me, for my creative energy, I had maybe a room for 2 to 3 books at DC because of all of that sort of all of that kind of extra energy you need to devote to writing the pitch, making sure your editor is happy with it, making sure the group editor is then happy with it, making sure the continuity is served by all of it, making sure that it's going to hit the kind of sales numbers that they need for this,
Yes.
making sure that whether or not it has the marketing support, whether or not that it has new IP and characters that can spread into other things, like all those considerations, take up a lot of your energy. And so you have like room for 3 books when you're doing that. And now I have room for 5 books when I'm doing my own stuff, because
100%, buddy.
So
yes.
That anyway.
I get it. No, absolutely, man. And again, thank you for that kind of level of conversation that we're having and stuff, because truly I appreciate it.
And again, just to be clear, that's not a negative. That's not even saying that's a negative thing. Just meaning like, I don't have to write a pitch for those different levels of editorial, which again is a necessary thing. That's not like you shouldn't have to do that. Or like, you shouldn't have to convince the group editor. You should. When you're working on a $1 billion property like Batman, you definitely should have to do that.
It's a shared universe, Scott. And you're 100% right. And that not only means writing stories where everybody's involved or you have a central theme as you're describing, but also understanding that it is beyond your editor and artists. It's a collaborative effort, and that you do have to work color within the lines. That's always my metaphor.
Yeah.
And that is a responsibility as much as it is an opportunity to be able to play in that playground. And also, God, going back to American Vampire, and that was really its own thing at Vertigo. Black Mirror, God damn it, that's got to have been more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2010, so 12 years ago.
Okay, so 12 years ago. Yeah, man, again, I get it, and I don't blame you. And I really think that, and the wonderful thing about as the uncertainty of the comic market is right now, there is also that great opportunity, and I've said this a million times on the show. Back when I was a kid, the top of the mountain was DC and Marvel. Am I writing Spider-Man? Am I drawing Batman? Whatever. Now, thank God, because of Image and the last 20 years or so, we've really seen great opportunities for creator-owned books, and I've made my audience at DC or Marvel or both, and I take them with me, and now come along. If you like what I do, well, now I'm doing this stuff, and now I'm doing it more on my terms. And Substack is a part of this. Kickstarter is a part of this. Panel Syndicate, all these different platforms and these other publishers that have emerged, and that's great. And I think as someone who literally has been reading this stuff for 50 plus years, it is very exciting to see where the business is. I understand the uncertainties, and I appreciate that, but I also see it more as the glass is half full, and I know you do as well, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I know I'm in a pretty privileged position with it, so it's not to kind of sugarcoat the difficulties of the current landscape in terms of total uncertainty for freelancers who are struggling to, I understand that anxiety and all of that and the real life struggle of that. And I was lucky in comics to sort of come in and be given a lot of great opportunities. I mean, the place that I had a lot more rejection and a lot more struggle was when I was in books for years before that. But the level they face now is really different and unique to this moment, and it's particular. But the level of opportunity is also wild. I mean, just thinking about like all the different companies you can work for and all the different deals they present, having that control over your, when I did American Vampire, it was either Image, which, I was nobody's, and they were not as sort of broad in the amount of things they did at that time in 2009 as they are now. They were more focused on sort of some of the creator stuff that they had for a while. So there weren't a lot of opportunities to take a book like that to indie companies as a new creator, an up and coming creator, where it could survive. So you do a deal like at a place like DC, and then they take the rights and have the rights for
Yeah.
pretty much perpetuity, the movie and TV rights. But luckily, those are coming back to us soon. But the
Oh, hey, that's great, man. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
But
Oh my God, what a story! Absolutely.
Yeah, right. But the
Yeah.
nowadays, like you don't just have Image, which has the amazing rights deal around, but you've got Dark Horse, which has a similar deal that grants ancillary rights to creators, offers different sort of. Then you have below that, in terms of ancillary rights and what you have to get to keep. You have deals at places like Boom and Vault where they partner with you. You have deals like IDW, which I really like, where the rights are theirs for 3 years, but then revert to you.
Yep.
And they split things 50-50 with you, but there are no kickbacks, and it's fully your, like, there's a whole range all the way back down to the kind of deal I made on American Vampire, if that serves you the best right now.
Certainly.
And that level of opportunity, again, is really exciting, even though the competition and the amount of books coming out is competitive and makes it scary, and again, blocks the way for the kind of commitment that a place like DC gave me on American Vampire when I started, like 12 to 15 issues, which now you'll probably get 6, you know what I mean? To see if
yes.
So I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's like a glass half empty, glass half full moment where it's both sides are right. It's spooky, but it's exciting too. And
agreed. And again, I'm a half full guy, and I think as scary as it is, there are opportunities as well. Comic Boom, and I'm glad, because truly, if there's one book I was excited for, and you guys have so delivered, it's Barnstormers. Gorgeous comic, great premise. I know this story because we've talked about it before. What inspired it, and how is it working with Tula Lote?
Oh, Tula's the best. I mean, she and I are friends now. Thought Bubble was one of the first conventions to invite me when I first started out, and she ran that con for a number of years.
I didn't know that.
Wow. Yeah. She ran the convention up in Leeds.
Wow.
And so I met her all the way back in like 2011 or 2012, and we became fast friends. And my wife was over there with me, and we all really got along. And I was always a big fan of her work. I saw it back when I was at Vertigo. And we did a couple small things together, like an issue of All-Star Batman, and she's done a bunch of covers. And we keep circling each other for years about, doing something together. And I had this idea that I started to toy with back when I was in fiction about barnstorming. And I love that idea. For those out there that don't know, like, barnstorming was this weird phenomenon in the 1920s where people came back from World War I, and the planes that they had been using were now out of date. So they were able to kind of buy them for very cheap, and they would bring them back to the States and then just fly around the country performing stunts and
carnivals, fairs.
Yeah.
The Rocketeer, essentially, if you go back and see that great Bill Campbell movie and stuff.
I love that movie.
Yeah. And also another one, and again, this is why I love talking to you, Scott, the Blue Max, the great movie that, and Waldo Pepper.
Waldo Pepper, dude, exactly. Yeah.
Redford. Yeah.
Redford. Yeah. They, it's a fascinating moment because in a lot of ways, I loved it back in the day when I was doing fiction because of I was young, and the daredevil aspect of it, where they created crazier and crazier stunts where they would jump from plane to plane and hang off the wings. And eventually they all kind of either died or it was regulated out of existence by the FAA versioning, where they stopped it. So they kind of made laws so you couldn't do it anymore. But for this moment, it was young, desperate people kind of using this machine that I realize now in this moment as an older sort of writer, looking back and saying there's connections to the feeling I have now about what it would be like to be young at this weird moment. Like the 20s existed in between a pandemic and a war, at moments of cataclysm, and another cataclysm coming. Depression. And so there's this feeling of anxiety in the air, and people who are wealthy are sort of partying it up and making tremendous amounts of money. And people who are working are still, I think, shaken by everything happening and worried about the fragility of the system. And there's all kinds of labor disputes coming in. So the book is a lot about that. The book is, as much as it's about two people, it's about a guy who's a barnstormer and claims to be this World War I pilot, but has like a darker secret past and is impersonating that person. And instead, he crashes into a wedding, and the bride to be decides she's going to leave with him, and so she forces him to take her with him, and the two of them become close and start performing these stunts and robbing mansions as they go. And it's this kind of doomed adventure that has a lot to do with that moment as a reflection of this moment. So I'm really, really deeply proud of that one. And Tula couldn't be a better partner and co-creator. So much of the story and the beauty of that book comes from her, not just on the page, but off, in terms of the ideas and the passion in it and all of that. She's just amazing. So I love her to death.
Two issues are out. And again, you can get them through Amazon's Comixology Originals. So if you have a Prime account, you can get it. Is it only 3 books? Is it can only be 3 chapters?
Oh no, it's 5. It's 5 chapters.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Are all the best? Because that's another thing people keep asking. Are all these initial? I know Noctara, obviously, you just finished your 2nd volume and now available.
Yeah, third volume starts in the new year. We're starting.
Okay.
But we have a big Val special coming out in November. It's
that's great.
Yeah, a big one shot with Francis Manipal drawing. It's like a secret story about our main character, Val. So.
Well, again, I adore it, and I'm very excited. I don't know when issue 3 comes out, but
it comes out. I just handed in the lettering. I think it goes Canary, Barnstormers, and then Dudley in that order. So
okay,
right after New York, basically next week we do Book of Evil, and then the following, I think it's 2 weeks after that, to give that book a week to kind of circulate. 2 weeks after that we start Canary, then Barnstormers, then so sort of towards the end of October it'll be coming out.
That's awesome. And again, man, I love when you and Francesco get together, and very excited about Night of the Ghoul. I can tell from the helmet it's a World War I kind of thing.
Yeah, so that one that comes out in, so the books, all the books we're doing at Comixology in digital come out in print about 3-4 months after they finish in digital.
Sure.
And come out as a digital trade. So we have Demons came out. The trade for the physical trade came out 2 weeks ago. After the print came out, it was a 3-issue book, but the issues were they were big. They're 40 something pages a piece. So
yeah,
it was the size of 5 to 6 issues, a normal arc. But Night of the Ghoul, the first issue of that, which is again double size. It's the first 2 digital issues collected, so it's like a big 50-page book.
Wow.
It's going to be 3 oversized kind of 50-page things.
Cool.
That comes out first week of October. We'll have it at the con. I'm really excited about it. We're out with that one right now for TV and film, and it's
cool.
Yeah, we're having really good conversations about it, so I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll have some good news soon to share.
I gotta touch base with, and I'll bug you via email. I would love to talk to Tula. I haven't had Francis on forever, and a great excuse is to talk about Clear.
We can all come on together if you want, but you can talk to them, and you feel free to talk to them one-on-one too.
Honestly, occasionally I don't mind doing a couple creators at once, but honestly, I always worry that someone's going to get left out of the conversation. And the last time I really allowed myself to do it was with Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp when they were doing Green Lantern. And I was very mindful of making sure I had plenty of questions for Liam, because I really respect the hell out of him. But that said, it's like, just like you and me, man. I mean, I could talk to Grant for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Without even trying. Because Grant. I mean, my God.
I know. I love Grant. Yeah. I miss him. I tried to go in to see him at one of the readings for Luda in the city, and I couldn't make it in because of my kids stuff. I really wanted to go in and say hi. I wrote him and said I was sorry I couldn't make it. But
I gotta do my usual comment, because Wesley says watching Word Balloon definitely gets me to pick up stuff I may not have come across on my own, and I am enthusiastic about the work. This is why I don't do critiques. If I'm talking to somebody, I like the book. It is that basic. And also, I always, on Twitter, when somebody says something like what Wesley just said, I always quote the tweet and say, the system works. Because really, man, hey, man, I love, and another guy like that is, I don't know if you've ever met Calvin Reed. who
No,
worked for
I don't think
Publishers
so.
Weekly. He and Heidi McDonald do a really great, and forgive me, I forget their third co-host, but they do a very good podcast. Calvin's like 10 years older than me, something like that, and still, and in his late 60s, still very excited about what's coming out from comic books,
Yeah,
mainstream and indie. And it's like, yeah, man, because this is why, again, as volatile as this current moment is, there is a lot of great creativity happening right now, and it is
oh,
thrilling to talk
so
about
much.
this.
I was just at
Yeah.
like in Memphis and met all these young talents
Yeah.
coming in, and the enthusiasm they have for the medium, and the kind of, I guess, also the daring that they're bringing to it in terms of their storytelling, the ideas they have. I mean, comics is in really good hands for the next couple of generations. It's very exciting to see. I think, the challenge for us, or people that are more established, I think, is to both, stay exciting to yourself always, and make sure you're, not chasing, I don't know, chasing something that's safe or easy. And then also making sure that you inspire and let those people be an inspiration to you, and encourage and support them as part of the, community as well. Because honestly, half the time I'll read something by someone brand new, or see some new artist and be like, wow, I want to write. Like Wildfire was very much like that, that Hayden is just so different than anyone I've worked with. And seeing Hayden's style, made me, I said to them when I was on the phone with them, I mean, on Zoom with them, I was like, look, this is going to be your book as much as mine, or more than mine. And I'll follow your lead. Like, I want to follow your storytelling visually. I want you to be the one. Here's the things that need to happen in the issue. And I give them a full script. That's like, I do a hybrid kind of Marvel script, but,
Okay.
as long as that's what they want. I say to them, to every artist, I say, how do you like to work? And then whatever they want to do, I'll do, or try to do,
Sure.
But with Hayden, it was that kind of a script. And then, but the point is, Hayden is so talented and young, and that some of the people I'm about to work with too, with things that I'm going to announce, are younger. And I want it makes me young at heart, and better to try and adjust to their style and their ideas, and let them really lead at times on books like this. And I think Wildfire is like 10 times better for that. The sort of I think the leadership role that Hayden took on in a lot of places. So
Sebastian wants to know any update on Chain with Kristantina.
yeah, really soon you're going to hear about it in just a little bit. Very,
Sounds good.
very matter of days, not like matter of like days, week, not months and months or anything.
Understood. And yeah, you've got obviously the three books, and I'm assuming it's the hard versions of these that are going to be at New York.
Yeah. So the way it works is, so like we have Demons is out, and I have that already out. We have the issues, and we have the trade. And we're really grateful to everybody for supporting it as much as they did in physical. And then Night of the Ghoul, which is the second one, comes out, the second series to come out in print. The first issue comes out this coming week, so we'll have it at Comic-Con. And then after that series is finished, so in 4 months or so, I think it's in March. 5 months, so March, Clear starts in print.
Okay.
So they all have their own. They all kind of come out on their own, so they don't kind of crowd each other in the direct market.
Sure.
So they come out one at a time that way. We have Demons, and we'll have the first of Night of the Ghoul there.
And again, more information on Book of Evil next week, or it comes out.
Yeah, it comes out digitally. So the way it works, so the books kind of come out digitally, and during that time they'll come out. The way I'm trying to do it is almost like every week you get like, it goes like it went like, Demons, Clear, Ghoul, like 1 1 1, and then next month it was 2 2 2, and then next month 3 3. Every week you get a new issue of the series, and so that's the way it is with the second wave. It kind of goes Canary, Barnstormers, Dudley, Canary, Barnstormers, Dudley. So we have 1 1 1 2 2 2. Now we have Book of Evil coming out, and then Book of Evil will kind of join that rotation, but we'll do after Book of Evil 1, we'll do 3 3 3, and then it'll kind of join after that. So
I
that's all
talked to
digital. And then when it comes
Okay.
out in print, they each have their own. They each kind of come out without the other ones coming out at the same time, so they each have their 3-month window to come out in print. So
I talked to Pan Ocean about Canary, and I love it, and I love what he's doing with it, and the scope of his panel construction and
oh
everything.
man,
It's
yeah,
beautiful, just gorgeous, man.
he's unbelievable, and he's also really hilarious. Like he's a really good partner and friend, and he's so funny. But this one came from both of us. Just we were hanging out at a con. Honestly, it was with Donnie Cates, and it was at a convention where and Matt Rosenberg, and we were up late, and the convention was having a Hot Wheels convention also.
Ah!
And
I love Hot Wheels.
the way they work, which is really weird, I didn't realize, is that they all kind of trade or sell Hot Wheels, but they cover their like hotel room and all of these cars, like Hot Wheel cars. And then they do it all night long. And so you can go into the rooms and like buy them all night long. And so
Hilarious.
Glenn was like, let's go in and pretend we really are like know our shit about Hot Wheels. And so we went around to like 3 a.m. buying Hot Wheels cars. And I remember talking to Dan about Westerns, and I knew he loved Westerns because we were friends anyway. But we were saying, like, we started getting in the conversation about like, well, if you did a Western now, what would it be like? Because so many of the things that Westerns deal with, or the way that a Western is constructed, feels oddly small for some of the kinds of problems and things that we would as a team would want to address in a book like that, you know, because Westerns often like tackle, even in these allegorical ways, the things that are in the zeitgeist at that moment. My favorites, and you know, his favorites, like Josie Wales and Magnificent Seven and The Wild Bunch and all of that, you know, like Searchers. And so that idea of doing something like that, it felt like, well, what if we do one that kind of is a straight Western, but at the same time gets more and more almost true detective kind of cosmic horror as it goes, and feels like it's about how you would do a Western given the way in which the moment feels almost too big for one, you know? So that was the fun thing, was like building that story together and just saying to him, like, this is going to be an ambitious book. And he was like, let's go for it. And be like, it's going to break some genre boundaries and go nuts and really, but it's also one of the ones that, like The Wake, you know, one of those books that an AD that
Yes.
I feel like you just help, you know, you wind up going on that adventure and being like, I can only do this with this person, and let's go somewhere you never expect as a reader and as a creator on the book. But I mean, we know the ending, but being like, that's a crazy ending. Can we get there? And then getting there and being like, you know, all right, well, yes, I'm very, very excited about that one. I'm excited about all of them, man.
Dudley, I know you are, man.
Like Dudley.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. I don't have an image ready for Dudley, and I apologize.
Don't worry about it. But for everybody out there, like Dudley, that's a book. Jamal and I have been friends a long time, and we've been circling each other. Yeah, I've always wanted to work together. He was actually one of the first people to be very kind to me in comics when.
Oh, that's great.
He didn't remember this. I was like, you don't remember? We did a signing at the old Jim Hanley's Universe back when I first broke in. Like, I had one issue maybe of American Vampire out, and it was him and Stefan Rue. And somebody else, and but the two of them, Jamal especially, were very much like, come on over, sit over here, talk to like, what's the, hey, what are you getting page rate wise? Oh, well, you know what, you should ask for this, like all the kind of information that, you know, creators aren't, you know, they don't always have to be that generous with that stuff.
I hear you.
Jamal was very much like, here's welcome, and here's how you should be thinking about your relationships with your editors and your company and all that. And so anyway, we've been friends a long time, and he has a child who's the same age as my oldest. And so we were like, a few years ago, we were like, we got to do something. And then we started talking about, I love what he did with Molly Danger. And I was like, let's do something all ages. And then we started talking about this story about a young inventor who's 15 and winds up coming into possession of the greatest machine ever built by Daedalus back in ancient times, and it's a perpetual motion machine, and this mythical invention that essentially opens portals in space-time because it defies all the rules of physics. And so it's being pursued by this group of evil kind of inventors called the Needle's Eye, and it posits that there's been a secret society of inventors going all the way back to ancient times through everybody, through Nikola Tesla and Einstein and Thomas Edison, all the way up to now, that have had in their possession this machine, and now it falls into this kind of young kid's hands, just by way of accident, and he has to figure out what to do with it. And so it's for adults 100%, but it's also really kid friendly, teenager friendly. And I love it. Again, it's like exuberant and fun and hopeful and, a blast to make together.
That's wonderful, man. All right, listen, because we're getting close to the end.
I can keep talking for a little.
Oh, you can keep talking? Okay, because I'm going to demand that we carve out a little time. And while people are maybe loading some other questions, well, first, Dragon, let me do this because I gotta know. I need an Elvis update from you.
Oh,
well, we can save it till the very end, but yeah, man. But first, Dragon wants to know: will there be a hardcover or oversized editions for Demons or Ghoul?
There might be. I mean, we have the kind of ability to do that with Dark Horse, so I think it depends if we. It depends on the demand from you guys. Like, ultimately, we can decide to do that if enough people ask for it. And I think with some of the books like that, I think it would be, yeah. I mean, it did well enough that I feel like we'd be excited to do it. So
would that be something that you would use your Substack and say, hey, everybody, what do you think? Or how you gauge audience?
I could ask there, but we're lucky enough that we have a really good partner in Dark Horse who sort of would be doing it. And they do such a good job with all the hardcovers that, it'd be fun to get to do that way. So we might do them again if you really want them. Then, not to sound crass, but tell Dark Horse and pick up the issues and that, and the better it does, the more demand there is for it. And same thing. Like, one of the things that's exciting about the books, and kind of speaking to the same thing we were saying earlier, but from a different angle, coming in at this point, like, and I'd say this to every kind of creator out there, or aspiring creator, I mean, you have a different relationship to the rights on your book than you did when I was coming in. Their demand for original content and IP and all the terms that people hate using, including me, like, that reduce awesome storytelling to what sounds like kind of commercial package, but it's the truth. Like, there's a demand for intellectual property because there's so many streaming services and places that want new stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas 10 years ago, there was just a few cable channels that even made them, and they only had a certain amount of time slots. Yep. Now, the demand for constant churn of good shows is really, insatiable. And so, many, many, many more things get options than they used to because there's just more places that were willing to pick them up.
Yes.
Does that mean there's the same windfall money that there might have been before? No. There is money in it. There's less, but there's more of a chance that you're going to option your stuff and be able to do it on your own terms than you were 10 years ago. So for me, on some books like Witches, I can decide, you know what, this went around once. I really want to attach myself to it and jock to it and do it together and see if we can do it. And we were very involved in that one. And other ones like Noctara, Tony and I were like, they came to us with the screenwriter at Netflix and somebody we both really loved. And we're like, you know what, go ahead, like go with it. We don't need to be involved at all. And, you guys understand the core elements of it. And luckily they've been really kind about keeping us involved. But one of the things,
it is still in development, or
we just got the pilot from them. I'm really excited.
Hey, great.
Yeah, we get so we're it's live action. Yes, it's live action. I see the question.
Yeah, Nerdette was wondering. Absolutely.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll continue to move there. I'm excited. We literally I haven't read it yet. It we just got it. But the point is, like, you have so much more control over what you choose to do with each thing than you used to, that it's a really fascinating moment in that regard too. Like, you have these ways of kind of making money from the kind of rotation of your stuff out in the world. And so the benefit of the Comixology books, they have, if anyone like is lucky enough to get to approach Bryce and the people working at Comixology, give me 1 second to just say this, because it is a fantastic place to work in the way that there's tremendous creative freedom, and the rights situation, you have the rights entirely. Like they have uh,
Wow.
an opportunity to sort of look at it first and make an offer to you, but you can refuse that offer if you want to take it out to market. So there's no hold on the stuff you're doing. They're incredible creative partners. So it's like being at Image in that way, where
Sure.
or Dark Horse, where you keep the rights with your co-creator and get to do what you want, and you have creative freedom, and the books come out,
Plus they're backed by Amazon, and obviously Amazon has the streaming structure as well, and they're
Yeah.
looking for content. So no, I get it, man. And again, I appreciated what Chip did when he was running
Chip was
Comixology
awesome.
Originals, and obviously Bryce is doing the same. And I hope to talk to Bryce about what's happening at Comixology, because
You
so many of
should.
our friends have great books over there.
He's fantastic, and the whole team over there is fantastic. I've honestly, the level of support they've shown for us in our books, and when you go to New York, you'll see like they do trailers, they do like this whole marketing campaign for all of it. They've thrown us like, and everybody there, dinners and parties, and they're so kind to the creators there. I really can't say enough good things about Comixology and the support that they show for the creators that are involved there, and just also the comics in general. They sponsor Artist Alley in New York, and they sponsor Thought Bubble, the whole con, and
That's great.
So yeah, so go show some love to them when you see them, because they're a really good place.
Honestly, yeah, I mean, really, and especially my older relatives who are new to streaming, I'm like, get Amazon. You get a great streaming network as just part of the whole 2-day shipping thing, and certainly for comic book readers, again, Comixology, it's just incredible. Don Gomez wants to know: are there any older creatives that you'd like to collaborate? Like, and it's funny because he mentions Kelly Jones. I would think you and Kelly Jones would be a marriage made in heaven in terms
I
of
love
that.
Kelly Jones. I would love to. There's so many. I mean, there's too many to name, honestly. I mean, one person that I keep talking about working with again, who we got to work with on I don't want to think of them as older, but Dennis Cowan is somebody who I had a great time working with him on the Noctara Blacktop Bill special.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Him and Kent Williams, and it was just out of control fun. So he and I are talking. I mean, I just saw him in Memphis, and I was like, I'm gonna call. We'll talk this week about doing something. But there are too many. I mean, Klaus Janson is somebody I really want to reach out to again, a friend, and also somebody who I think is tremendously underrated talent in a lot of ways.
100%, man.
On his own. Yeah, there are a bunch. I mean, you could throw a rock, and like the amazing that I would love to work with for Andy Kubert. He's not old, but I
hear you though. Yeah.
Creator own with Andy.
Sure.
On him with. So yeah,
you're cracking me up, man. No, and believe me, I know. Like Kelly and I are basically the same age, so yeah, believe me, I understand. It's all right, and I'm sure Kelly would be like,
I don't think of him. Like Greg, I don't think of as older, and Greg's 15 years older than me. But,
sure, yeah. Absolutely. Let's see. Oh, Nerdette wants to know, and again, this might be a spoiler. Will we see more from Bailey and Noctara?
Yeah,
that she had such an incredible story of using math to make sense, and it's something I've tried to explain to people, but she did it perfectly.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, Nerdette. So the way we've structured Noctara is that every arc is kind of told from a different character's point of view. So the first one is told from Val's point of view. The second one was from Bailey's, or Piper's, as her call sign is. And the third one, spoiler, is going to be told from Emery's, from M's. So each one has its own motif. Like Val's had the countdown of the miles, and Bailey's had the fractions of the math, because the world is kind of fractional in her mind of Noctara, because things are kind of divided by the darkness. And for M, he's all about sort of science and experimenting, and about the concrete answers in math and that. So he has a format where he talks about his own scientific method, where it's if, then, what, and because. And so each chapter is divided that way. And so the first one is if, and that's the first of 5. The arc is 5 issues, and it's really fun. I don't want to give anything away about it, because it's super, super nuts. But Bailey, everybody's in it. Everyone's back. Everyone, it's like, bigger, and it kind of aliens to Alien for the last, or whatever. Like it just gets This one gets really, really big because they're going, if you're reading it, this is where they're going to find kind of the people that caused this big experiment to go wrong. And they're hiding in a base. We all know this already, called EOS, which is buried somewhere in the US, and they're going to go find it and have a showdown with them. So it's a really big arc for us.
That's great. Someone asked earlier, and I can't find the question, and it's fine because, again, you've explained what you want to do at DC when you feel the time is right or whatever. But they did announce a while ago a Black Label Nightwing. So is that something that you've decided, nah?
Well, I talked to them about it. It's not, you know what it is, honestly. And again, like, let me revisit some of the stuff we said about DC earlier, because I just want to make sure I was being clear.
Sure, man. Of course.
I don't like even this, like, Nightwing was a character when I was talking to them about doing it that I felt didn't have the kind of story I wanted to tell about him, where I felt like it would bring back a lot of kind of core elements, but do something in a new way. And what Tom and Bruno have been able to do with that book is so dazzling and great, and one of the shining points in superhero comics that,
oh yeah,
it feels not redundant, but it feels like not quite as urgent to me to do. And I had this conversation with Chris Conroy there. So it was more like, I definitely have it and I'd love to do it one day, but I feel like there's such a great amount of good Nightwing stuff right now coming from Tom and people at DC that,
yes,
you know, I that's one of those ones where I feel like, why take any oxygen from that, or be even, you know, like give that space to just sort of shine. So, but the other thing, like, again, I just to be clear, like, the kind of thing that I would go back for me, and the things that I talk to them about, are when they're going to create a moment that sort of proudly sort of reinvigorates, I think, their core message about what their characters stand for, what they want to stand for that moment and for the upcoming years, about creating a big tent, inviting new people in, and creating an event or a moment that represents that on the page. You know, that's what's exciting to me. That idea of being part of something that unites everything to say, this is what we stand for. This is what we're about. Those are the things that mean a lot. Not like, you know, I know that events in the past have had the constraining feelings, or the thing that I was trying to say before wasn't that I felt that, you know, that DC, the books needed to be lashed around some pole because they were all drifting too far into their own things. It's more that I feel like, if they're every now and then, I get excited about the idea of a company putting together a big story or something that says, this is what we're about, and this is what we believe in about our characters and about our fans, and this is what's going to carry us a little bit farther towards our principles and the things that we believe in, about expanding our roster, about inviting in new talent, about being true to the core of the characters, all those kind of things at once. Those are the things that get me like, you know what, I could make room for all the stuff that I'm doing with my own stuff for something of that size and that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I get excited about, that idea. That's what I mean. And I believe moments. That's what I'm saying, is I believe in the moments of, like, every now and then creating a story that's not just for commercial purposes or hey, let's do a big event, but something that really restates the people at the company believe the characters and they, as editors, creators, and everything, stand for at that particular time, and what they want their comics to be about. And when I agree with that kind of moment, and I like being a part of a story that articulates that in a big, bombastic, crazy way. I love those ones. So that's what I mean. Saying. So again, I wasn't trying to knock, like, the idea of things having their own room to breathe or anything like that.
No. And again, I appreciate you. There's a likelihood this might be a two-parter. We'll see. But here's an interesting question from Kalai, 1996. Grant Morrison said in an IGN interview that they suggested to you, after Dark Knight's Metal, outside the source world is the Marvel Universe, and the multiverse is a spaceship. What were your thoughts on all of this?
He said that to me right here. I was sitting right on this couch in the den talking to him about Metal, and I was like, I really, really want the break the source wall at the end to do this. And he was like, well, whatever you do, don't define it. And I was like, no, I would never, except to create more I just think that it's time to make something that's about moving beyond the boundaries of what we have, moving beyond the physical and figurative boundaries of what we see as the limitations of our own universe, to try and,
Totally.
and create danger from that and excitement and mystery. And he was super about it and really cool. Like, he was so about it that that's when he offered to do the Wild Hunt issue together, which was part of our event, which was awesome.
Sure.
But he was like, he threw this a crazy, amazing idea about Superman. He was like, if the multiverse, I didn't want to take it from him because it was too much. I felt like if I took it, it would be like ripping him off or saying, there was no way to do it without being like, Grant made this up. But it was like, he had the multiverse as a kind of machine that Superman was almost like pedaling across.
Yes.
And it was amazing. And I was like, and then he's like, and it breaks the multiverse and it breaks the source wall. And he was like, what would be the best thing if it was on the other side? And I was like, what? And he was like, if Silver Surfer was there, being like, whoa. And I was like, I can't. I was like, you don't know how like my heart grew 3 sizes hearing that. Where I was like, do you know how badly I would love to do a Marvel DC crossover with you, Grant, and with everybody over there, Jason and
yeah,
and like we'd all love that. I mean, I'd love to do it. I was like, I'd write anybody. I don't need to write Batman or whatever. Give me somebody, the fun of that's, and to me, I know it sounds insane because I know you can't, like, the problem with events like that is, nobody wants anyone to die or lose.
Sure.
The way you'd structure it is that the classic thing, like they'd crash into each other, they'd fight because they don't know each other, and then they'd agree that their bigger enemy is whatever Darkseid and Thanos have like bonded to do.
Galactus, yeah.
But I would do that story in a second. Like, I would be there. I really pushed DC, Jim and Dan. I said, listen, like, if there's a way to do this at the end of Metal, and they were like, there's no earthly way. There's just, from Amalgam to now, there's no way. And there's too many proprietary things. And maybe
yeah.
Hope. I mean, that was 2020. I mean, even 2 years later, maybe it's changed, But
yeah, I don't think for the better, unfortunately. I mean,
probably not.
We'll see. God,
there's a lot of brand protection, but I mean, all of us are up for it. I think it's one of the last things that we could do in comics that would really set the bar in a different way than the movies and TV shows. I mean, I'm curious to know what you think about this, but like, one of the things that I think is kind of a challenge for superhero comics is how ubiquitous like superheroes are in pop culture, where right now all the streaming services have so many shows and good shows that
really good shows
kind of occupy every nook and cranny of superhero land. Like, because every big stuff and the small stuff is all being done all over the place, that it makes you kind of wonder again what you can do in comics that isn't being done elsewhere, just because there's such an embrace of all the material that when I was a kid, like, there was not anywhere, there was no possibility of a Daredevil or a She-Hulk TV series. You know what I mean?
I do, man. Good Lord, I'm from the 70s when even the crappy, like, that Doctor Strange movie, yay, or the challenge of the superheroes, the roast, and the other thing. Are you kidding me? Good Lord, it was like, this is great. Look at it, Weston Burt Warner, Batman again, 20 years later, fantastic.
That's what I mean. So the idea that it's everywhere. It means, like, what can we do in comics that you're not seeing, And I do think that's a really interesting challenge, and a fun one. It doesn't mean that you have to go huge like DC versus Marvel either.
No.
But I mean, I think you can think at either end of that spectrum. You can think, what can you do in a smaller needlepoint way that isn't being done elsewhere? What can you think in a big, completely over the top epic way? And what can you do in ways that are in the middle, that are, particular to the medium that exists in some kind of sweet spot in between. So I don't know, but I'm curious, it is definitely something I think about too a lot. Like,
do you, I don't know if you were reading back then, and I wasn't, and I came to it after the fact. And I love this idea when you mentioned that on the other side of the source wall is the Marvel universe, when in Quasar, when they had Barry Allen.
Oh yeah.
Buried Alien.
I was talking to Greg about this because he drew Quasar, and he was
no kidding. Oh my God.
That was his first Marvel gig, actually, was Quasar. After he did some one shots, I think, that were like, what if the Daredevil killed the Kingpin and stuff like that. yeah, Quasar was his thing. But again, like, and I know, like, I see that question, like, crazy idea, not superheroes, like the
Yeah,
idea.
Stefan. Well, and again, I mean, we're kind of getting there right now. I mean, that's what Tom and Phil Hester are doing with Gotham City Year One. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, and it's a great idea, and God, I love. I mean, again, not only that, I'm so excited for that, but what Tom and Greg are doing with Human Target,
Oh,
great
sure.
stuff, man, great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and again, like that space that they're sort of building out is super exciting, and there's non-superhero stuff you can do within the superhero space that goes all the way back to Gotham Central to now, that, you know, like,
Absolutely,
ways, and Marvels. I mean, that book, like, you
love
know,
that.
like, all, like, there are all kinds of ways of doing it. I just mean, and if you're saying not superheroes in terms of creator owned, believe me, like,
Well, yeah,
where I'm living, like, so I get it.
absolutely, man. Everybody is. No, that's great that it's happening. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think I don't think those things. I guess the other thing I'm saying is, like, I think sometimes we get, like, licensed or creator owned, you know, creator owned or Marvel or DC, you know, and there are definitely people sometimes on one side or the other that are adamant about there's one that's better than the other in some way to work in or whatever. But I think most of us, like, for me at least, like, I need and love both. Like, I love the challenges of working in the licensed world and superheroes. And then I love going back and just having no constraints and making my own stuff entirely and owning it. So yeah, but it doesn't mean, like, doing my own stuff, I don't think about superheroes and think about where I'd land or what I'd like to do. I think you can love both, you know, and think about both all the time.
Stepan says, all joking aside, I really want to see a healthy diversity of genres in comics. Over reliance on superheroes always feels like eggs in one basket kind of deal. I hear what you're saying, Stepan, and I agree with you. But I would also say, building on what Scott has been talking about, the Rucka Mike Perkins Lois Lane book, the Matt Fraction, Steve, damn it, Jimmy Olsen.
Lieber.
Yeah, Steve Lieber. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, man. And again, that is why it is great that some of the heroes have established those kinds of supporting characters. I would love to read a Foggy Nelson book.
Oh,
because,
totally.
you know, and the way that Brian and others, including, she just wrapped up, Gail Simone on Jessica Jones and stuff. It's like, no, we need more people. Like, and in fact, when you mentioned Marvels and stuff, we need more people that are street level that live in this world and live in this universe, and they have a different perspective on what's happening. And I love, and especially Foggy and the nuanced ways from Frank Miller to Mark Waid to Chip and all the others that have touched Daredevil. It's like, I think Foggy, in a lot of ways, like Lois Lane, is Matt Murdock's conscience. And it's like, Foggy's the guy that Matt, you know, that he can go to Matt and go, hey, you're fucking up.
Oh,
you know, I know you don't see it right now, but you are, and I know you, and you shouldn't be doing this. And I mean, to that level. Or I've always said my, and this is superhero, supervillain, but my favorite dynamic is Ben Grimm and Dr. Doom, because they're still having the argument they had back in college where you're a dumb jock and I hate your guts. Well, you're a nerd and you're a science and magic nerd and I hate your fucking guts, and everything you do does not impress me. And both are saying the same thing to each other. And that's why I love reading Victor Von Doom. It's like, no, Ben and Victor are like, and then he calls him Vic. It's like, you know something, Vic, you know, you're full of shit. And I've always known you're
that's what I mean. There's a magic to being able to do things that are, you know, you can only do on the page that way, because it's a space has different creative elasticity. You know, you don't have the same pressures, and you're making it just as a team together, you and your co-creators. And that's what I mean. I think we're all thinking about when that material that you're used to seeing in comics specifically for so long is now everywhere and all kinds of medium and being adapted really well. How do we then meet that challenge on multiple fronts? Because it's not just superhero comics that are being adapted. It's like, you know, again, like everything that I've put out, all my friends, like everything is optioned somewhere at some
great
now, luckily, you know, and that just means there's a demand for all of it being, and that's not like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or any of that. I'm saying,
no, but it's cool.
The point is, like, there's a demand for all of it. And creating a space that's what are we, you know, how do you find a way of keeping the things you're doing on the page really about that medium and really special to comics?
What do you think? What do you think of what Greg? What do you think of what Greg's saying here about Saga? Huge world, huge but small story. Too big of a story for a movie. Too big of a budget for a TV show to adapt.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see that coming out, but I think that is a perfect example of something that's really special to comics. That, again, I thought Sweet Tooth was kind of that way, in the way of being
absolutely
like, never going to make things with the horns on his head. Like, you're never going to, but
we got it.
Show, like, they totally got it, So I don't think that it's unadaptable or anything like that, Saga. But I just think that kind of contrast between what you're seeing and the scope it's able to do and the budget it's able to have, and then the intimacy and irreverence and heart of that story is such a great comics phenomenon that way, And I'd say, you see that with a lot of things. Like, I think Something Is Killing the Children leads into that. I think Nice House on the Lake, the stuff that James is doing, leads into that. I think those are really comics in that way. And that again, that's not like that, things have to engage in that way necessarily at all. It's just sometimes you're reading something that's using, it's an exciting question on all fronts for creators like me. How do I make something that really is about making a comic like Book of Evil right now? How do I make something that feels like you couldn't see it in another medium, that's about expanding and exploring the ways I can use this one to do something I haven't done before, rather than like thinking about it in terms of something that can be adapted or that can be this or that or whatever,
sure.
In that way. And I think that applies to superheroes, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think that question should only be for create your own. I think if you're going into superheroes, or you're thinking about superheroes, how do I make something that's really special to this medium? That really brings the kind of the elements that are there, whether I'm going smaller, like you're saying, and the way Tom likes to do with Tom King with his partners, or how do I do something that's so big and crazy you couldn't see it in film almost because it's so over the top, So
Stepan wants to build on it, and I hear what he's saying. He's so happy with the resurgence of horror comics during the last decade or so. I'd even go the last 15 years, Stepan, as a genre. It's a fascinating challenge to put on a comics page. I so agree, and I used to say this to Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith as well with 30 Days of Night. It's like and Kelly as well. And God, you go back to the original Swamp Thing, and Bernie and Len. I mean, that is a real challenge to create horrific comics when so much of it is and certainly with horror in film and television, it's the camera moves, it's the music, it is so many other things beyond the static image that comics are.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think the challenge, like that's one with Book of Evil, like the whole point was that, like what I was saying was like, and with Witches, we were thinking about this a lot too, but with Night of the Ghoul, we were thinking about this, like Night of the Ghoul uses the double thing, like basically that story is about, it's about the greatest horror movie that never existed, but in the story was made in the 30s. It's called Night of the Ghoul, and it burned in a studio fire that killed all these people involved. And this film buff finds the remnants of it and then tracks down the director, who's still alive in hospice care, and has changed his name and all this stuff. And so he has to do this detective work to track this old guy down. And he brings him the remnant. And it's like, what really happened? And the guy's like, well, the ghoul is real, and it's in this building, and it's going to kill all of us tonight. And you should never have brought that here. And that's the opening. And the idea is it cuts back and forth between this very claustrophobic, scary interview that he's doing with this guy as things become weirder and weirder in this rest home, and the original remnants of the film that are black and white, So Francesco draws it half and half, like half is in the present, half is the burned remnants of the film, and they catch up to each other. And that being able to do something like that might, maybe, I'm sure, and I don't want to say anything that disparages it as a film, because right now, like I said, it's literally out like right now for being considered.
Okay.
But it's fun for us because I think it's going to make the best film ever, and whoever's looking at it should go buy it for millions of dollars. But the thing I'm trying to say is that for the medium of comics, the whole fun of it was, how do we create something that feels scary because it's using the page and the visual space of comics to allow your imagination in those parts that might in a film be more sensory and more visceral, and tactile to your imagination to fill those in. So how do you tell the parts that then leave out for you to create the kind of experience? How do you tell those parts that will engender that mechanism in you? And the same thing in Book of Evil. Like, so for example, with Book of Evil, again, the book is this claustrophobic experience of you basically being thrust into the point of view of a kid because you're reading his journal and you don't know what's coming. And that there's a constant feeling of dread because you learn in the very first page, the first opening of the book, if you step outside the lines that are designed for kids to walk in this world, because someone can kill you or hurt you for pleasure. And if they won't be punished for that. If they do it while you're in the line, they will be given like a ticket. But if you're accidentally come out of the line you're in, they can torture you, do anything they want. And so there's this feeling of constant dread and that anything can come from any angle to get you at any moment. There's no protection. And so on the page, the exciting thing about that was, well, let's do it so that it looks like, you're seeing a few words on a page scribbled quickly and a picture that he drew of somebody. And then you turn the page, you don't know what's coming because it's so constantly terrifying, because his experience is so terrifying that the visual representation of that would be to give you no hand-holding. It would only be the prose and the spots and dark. It's like black on the page, white writing, and that feeling of like that. So just that question, creating horror on the page is a fun experiment to try and do in a medium that kind of resists certain things. And I think you'd normally be like, oh, it's harder to do it in horror and comics. I mean, but the truth is, like, there are all these benefits and fun things that allow you to play around in new imaginative ways that force your reader to fill in the parts with their own imagination in a way that's going to be 10 times scarier because it's them making up the scariest version of it rather than showing it. So
understood. Dragon has a very interesting, and thank you, Stefan. Yes, if people are watching,
like please. One more, and then I'll jump just to
Okay. Well, all right. Can I still get a quick minute about Elvis?
100%.
Yeah. All right, real fast. Last question from Dragon, and this is interesting. AI generated comics. Is it something you're thinking about doing? Intrigued by? Nervous? What? And have you had this discussion with the artists? What they're thinking and saying about this? Any fear of AI generated comics?
Not really. I mean, I think there's nothing scary to me about it. Only in that I think, I can't imagine it being something that would, do anything but challenge us to make comics that are our own and different and original in that regard. But at this point, it seems like such a nascent thing, such a beginning thing that it's more of a novelty in my mind and something that's like,
agree.
It'll be a number of years before it develops into something. And I think the truth is, hopefully it'll become a really fun tool to use to actually wind up expanding, like digital art, that was like, oh, it's going to threaten. But now people use it to make incredibly personal and original things that you couldn't make. It's a means to do something. So, I don't know. There's nothing about it right now that makes me worried, except the ways in which I think it could pull from other people's art without crediting them to make things and that stuff.
That's a very valid point. Absolutely, man. No, you're right.
Yeah, but outside that, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm only learning about it. I've only seen the
me
things
too.
Yeah,
me too. And I agree with you. It's still right now until we see evidence of examples. It sounds very gimmicky, but we'll see. I mean, and as you say, maybe people will learn to use it as a tool to elevate their own work. All right, Elvis, I got to ask you right off the bat. Baz Luhrmann. Really? Now, I haven't watched the whole thing, because I got to be honest, sometimes he annoys the hell out of me.
Oh, me too, yeah.
And all right, that's interesting to hear. Have you watched the whole movie?
I did. I watched it. I watched it once. I want to watch it again. But honestly, there was a lot I really liked about it. I like the embrace of the maximalist, almost like over the top kind of quality to it that just is weirdly sincere while still being kind of campy, that felt very Elvis-y. It was almost like watching an Elvis movie about Elvis that was just done in this massive way. So there was a lot I really enjoyed. I loved the energy of him performing live. I loved the sort of representations of how sort of dangerous he was on stage, that to me was like really exciting.
Agree.
And there were parts of it I thought were really touching as well. I think there were some things about it that that like were emphasized aspects of it that I found like kind of, I don't know, less interesting than other aspects of his life that I would have leaned into, and things that I think about the musical culture he grew up in and the people he was friends with and the things that he supported along the way that I wish they were lean into more and rather than other moments. But I think that, there's a lot I really loved about it. So I definitely like, kudos to the whole team for putting something together that was, I think, had a good spirit of Elvis and had a good sort of over the top kind of embrace of like every weird aspect of Elvis dumb. I think the thing that I love movies like Bubba Hotep, and it's like my favorite Elvis movie.
I'm a big fan as well. Absolutely.
And I love like the Viva Las Vegases and the,
sure.
I mean, for me, like, not to get too, but I'll say this, like, I fell in love with Elvis when I was a teenager, and it was because I wanted to like something that I thought nobody else would like. I grew up in New York City, and I was in a very preppy school, and I was like, I'm going to like this because these assholes are going to hate that. And I just thought that was cool. And then I wound up almost accidentally falling in love with it when I listened to the early stuff, the Sun Sessions, and read about him being my age at that time and going to school with nothing going for him, being poor and, dressing like basically like a rock star already, and going to listen to music that was forbidden and falling in love with, the club culture of that time, or blues artists and people from all kinds of demographics coming in from sharecropping, all that stuff. Like, that was exciting to me. Someone who went and dressed and put on eye makeup and like broke the rules and didn't give a shit what people thought. And like, it gave me confidence, and listening to his voice and the way he blended all this stuff together in his own new, like, all of it was like, exciting to me at that age, especially, and became totemically important. And then I just fell in love with the whole zaniness of it as it went. There's no era of Elvis I don't like, but
I am so with you, man. I was real fast, right? My favorite movies, and a lot of them are the cheeseball ones. The best movie I think he ever made, well, it's a tie. Jailhouse Rock and King Creole are my two.
Yeah, and Walter Matthau and the whole, like, I totally agree. But at the same time, I love Viva Las Vegas, and I love just the when he just goes balls to the wall, corny fun like that.
Oh yeah, Kissing Cousins. I love Kissing Cousins.
I love One in Acapulco, dude. A Cliff Diver thing.
Yes, like Harem Scarum. Yes,
I know. Like Harem's where he's like goes to, it's like, and he punches a tiger in that. He kung fu the tiger. Where I was like, how cool is that? I mean, it's just so. What I liked about it was like, I like also the strange buffet that it is, where like there is an Elvis moment for anything you're looking for, where it's like, you know what, I'm in the 90s, like I'm in like a campy. I want well, you know what? Well, how about this movie with him and Mary Tyler Moore where she's a nun?
Change of habit, everybody.
Right? And like,
come on. And the ending of that movie.
Like, 1970s tiger suit. Like, you know what? Actually, I really want something sincere that's like a feeling of coming back to your roots. Well, Elvis back in Memphis, where like after all these years of being in film, he's now listening to, like, he's back in Memphis and he's playing blues and soul and playing with the sweet inspirations and these people that he grew up with and that, and like that. And it's good, actual good music and that stuff. And like, all of it. Like, so, you want something that's like, anyway, the point is, like, what I liked also before Elvis Presley Enterprises, which again has done a fantastic job creating this whole complex there with the beautiful presentations of his stuff. But in the 90s, like when I was into it, it was a circus at Elvis Week. You would go for the anniversary of his death, and like it was like people dressed like Elvis as an alien and impersonator convention. I have a million pictures I'll send you of me at impersonator convention. Elvis was awesome. Elvis or Selvis was awesome. Like, Robert Johnson, who was like Robert Washington, sorry, who was like one of the first big African American Elvis impersonators. Like, and they all just brought something totally their own and fun and personal to them to it. There was and didn't have to sound like him, didn't have to be. It was like Elvis was like political in his own thing about
Elvis, absolutely.
Elvis. And
Yes.
Elvis was LGBTQ and like just the whole amazing like. So it was just this whole celebration of like anything you took from that whole kind of weird cultural sort of soup that Elvis became, that primordial thing. You took it and made it your own thing. And now it's much more like you go and there's like a bus that takes you to the thing and there's, it's fine. But I love that I always love that wildness of it. Wild at Heart, Nick Cage. I love True Romance. Sure. I love, yeah.
How about, I know Michael Shannon made his version of the story and I love that movie too, but I really love the Elvis Meets Nixon Showtime movie from the 90s. God damn, honestly, man, that is one of my favorite movies. And the craziness of that movie. I adore that movie.
And the whole, like, yeah, I mean, like I don't know. I love, I just.
Mystery Train.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Jim Jarmusch, Mystery Train.
Come on.
Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley. Carl Perkins, like, dude, I mean, like, it's the weird, haunted, sort of inspiring, wild, dangerous, totally mausoleum. Like all of it is like mixed together with Elvis. And I like that. And there's stuff that's like, upsetting. And there's stuff about appropriation. And then there's stuff about championing music that you wouldn't hear otherwise. And it's all mixed together. It's like big sort of, huge kind of overlapping ocean of stuff that's, you can pull what you want from it and it's exciting in all kinds of ways. So I love it. I have I have young Elvis and mature Elvis tattoos and my kids have Elvis names and the whole thing. So
that's outstanding. One thing about the Baz movie that I didn't like was that Tom Hanks had that weird Dutch accent. And it's like, and I'm so glad, I'm sure you've seen it. But on YouTube, there's a Nightline clip from the 80s, and Colonel Parker is interviewed by Ted Koppel. And I mean, it almost like, it's like, no, he invented himself to be this good old Southern boy. Yeah. And I wish they would have shown that rather than, Elvis.
He was like Foghorn Leghorn with his whole, like, what I mean? That whole.
Yes. And that's part of the con. That was part of the con.
That was part of the con. Like, there were weird choices in it like that. But I do like the idea that they, I mean, I'm not opposed to them vilifying him in that way. Like, I do think that there's a, as much as he did for, there's a vampiric quality to the idea that you take 50%. Now, as a creator, like and as somebody who's not as a kid, now as like somebody who works with agents and managers, the idea of literally giving 50% of everything to your manager is so horrific. Like, it's like, that anyway. I like, I don't know. Tom Hanks it was just part of the total weirdness of that movie that like,
and I love
because I was like, why are you choosing this? But you know what? Like, it kind of makes sense, but kind of doesn't. But
yeah, it was still entertaining. Yeah. How about Billy Gardell on that Sun Records show that was on the Nashville Network? I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm big into Sun. Like, the first year I ever went to Graceland for Elvis Week was like 94, 95. But it was like, I think it was 90. It was 95 because it was his birthday. I think it was like because he was born in 35. So I'm pretty sure it was that year.
Okay.
But Sam Phillips was still alive in there.
Wow.
And Scotty Moore was there. And
cool.
Carl Perkins was there it was me. He still wore the wig, the gray wig. It was amazing. And Sam Phillips with the dyed beard and the thing coming down Beale Street and the Cadillac, the blue,
wow.
It was awesome. So yeah, I mean, those guys are all still there back then, part of the zaniness. Elvis's veterinarian ran the Elvis Impersonator Olympics, which was called Elvis Fan Fest. I still have the shirts, and it was, his veterinarian who took care of his horses. It was like Doc something, ran the whole thing, and it was out of control. It was at this hotel. I'll just send you the pictures. I went a few years in a row. I still have them of every kind of Elvis you can imagine was up on that stage. It was awesome.
Hey, in Chicago,
Americana too. It was everything at once.
No, I get it. In Chicago, our great Elvis impersonator was this guy Rick Saucedo, who really looked like Elvis. I mean,
Yeah.
facially, and did a great imitation. But I even remember at Illinois State, Central Illinois, we had a cheeseball Elvis impersonator, and God, I wish I still had the photograph of all of us with him and stuff. But it was fantastic, and he had the wig
Well,
and everything.
I had my own jumpsuit that I had made when I was 19, 18. And it's like I have a picture of me in it that I posted once a long time ago, but I'm skinny as a rail back then. And I was like, it was like made from a woman's like white jumpsuit and made the belt and the whole thing. And brought it. It was the first time I went to Memphis, dressed like, and brought it, for the amateur impersonator thing and all that. It was a blast. I was like, I was a kid, so it was just fearless about all of it. It was fun, and it was an interesting moment too, because the '90s was so, it was also so like America kind of, unaware of all the stuff that kind of, I think, not, but just 9/11 kind of opened everything up in a way of being much more self-critical in a good way about your role in things outside of your own culture. Whereas I think at that time there was a kind of critical sort of the irony whole thing, and being critical of American culture by kind of sort of being satirical and laughing at some of the and being subversive and that. And so the Elvis stuff was such a churning part of that then, so it was very caught up in all of that too, of that moment.
I hear you. Yeah, the '90s were hell. That's the last time they moved the doomsday clock back, because we were under that impression that things were getting better, having no idea what was coming on 9/11. No, I hear you, man. Again,
I mean, then there was all kinds of strife in the '90s, but I mean, like there was less awareness, I think, globally of
agreed
the role America was playing in things and that whole kind of pop cultural miasma of like, of things that everybody was like the postmodernism of that time and all of that Elvis was like, very much involved in that whole kind of collage of things, the kaleidoscope of all of it, But
I'm not going to be in New York, but the next time we are at a convention together, I should really pull out the recorder, and you and I should just we just did it.
I do a podcast with you anytime, man.
You know that. Well, I feel the same way, Scott, truly. And I was really surprised. I saw you say on Twitter that it's been a year, and I'm like, oh man, I know I did want to. And again, I know how busy you are.
No,
but you could certainly, you're welcome back anytime. You know that.
No, I love it. When something goes through, if any of the stuff that I was talking about happens with TV or any of that, I'll come back and talk about it. But
that's great.
I'm really glad that we got to talk about Book of Evil. I'm so excited about this one. And again, if I can encourage anyone out there, like the things, my hope is that you'll check out all the books just for the price of one book. Like go on, if you have Prime, you can get all of them already. And none of this is me doing it to shill for it, because it really doesn't, like, I don't make money off you really getting a subscription to Comixology or any of that stuff. Like we got paid our page rates and stuff ahead of time. And there's really not a chance of us kind of, I think, paying that stuff back to get royalties, because they were good about our page rates and all that. And the royalty structure is different. So even if we did, it's not some windfall of money. So the point of me trying to get you to get a subscription is really twofold. Like one, I'm really proud of all the books, and I hope you'll check them out because I love them and I love my co-creators. But two, they've got a ton of other new people and legends making books over there that are really worth checking out. So if we can be the gateway for you to like get a subscription, go find people that you love that make you want to read more comics, fantastic. So, they have everything on there from like classics that you probably know, like The Dark Knight and that stuff, all the way to brand new stuff by up and coming talents like Stephanie Phillips and Justin Jordan and all kinds of people. So you should 100% check it out. Mark Bernardin, who I just hung out with in Memphis, and Ariella Cristantina on Adora. Like that book's amazing. A million things, so.
Well, and also make sure you get Scott's Substack, because again, even the free version, I listened to his 9-minute report on Memphis Comic-Con and Graceland and everything else, and of course promoting Book of Evil.
Yeah.
That, again, hits the stands next Wednesday, right before New York Comic Con, and also glad to talk about Clear, and we have Demons, and of course Night of the Ghoul, and some Dark Spaces IDW. Very exciting, man. I'm
Yeah,
glad
man.
you're giving people that
I am. And
opportunity.
if anyone's interested, like the Substack stuff, just to plug it for a second, like
Sure.
it's essentially a $7 a month subscription, and you get I'm teaching a class on there called Comics Rating 101. We're just finishing our first year, and then we're gonna do Comics Rating 102, where we look at student work together and published work. But for the $7, you get everything we've already done, all archived through videos. So classes on characterization and conflict, everything I used to teach then in both the workshop I did for DC and in college, and all kinds of other fun stuff. Like you get to send your books to me a couple times a year to sign if you just pay the shipping and stuff like that. So
cool.
Yeah, being a part of that, you get like a post every week or sometimes two that are, about comics that I've read, about craft ideas, about thoughts about the industry and that stuff, and all kinds of other stuff. So, that's one way. Also, you support that. It's exciting because the class that I get to keep doing the class, which I love, and it's already started to. A couple people from it have started to get work at one at DC actually, and one at in the indie world, indie publishing. But secondarily, like it's exciting because we're trying to use it to be able to eventually help partner with people to make books outside of the books I'm making. So yeah, it's a fun thing to be a part of on all fronts.
Well, congratulations, Scott, truly. And as always, I appreciate the level of conversation we get into. It means a lot that you're willing to share these thoughts and ideas and stuff. And again, you're killing it, man. I'm saying it. You're killing it. And I'm so glad that the audience is responding and you're getting to do the books you want to do on your terms and the doors that are opening up for you now in television and film. I certainly hope all that happens. And everybody, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, thanks. I just said thanks.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. We'll do it again. Everybody, great questions and great comments. I really appreciate it. And tomorrow night, I got a double header. Brad Meltzer is going to come on early.
Oh, nice.
And talk about his I Am Batman and I Am Superman books, the brand new Chris Iliopoulos I Am books. They are great first readers. If you want to indoctrinate your kids into the DC universe, you're going to love it. Oh, thank you, Stefan. He liked this episode. Well, again, man, hey, I'm here every day. It's guys like Scott that make these episodes special.
Yeah. Do me a favor, please tell Brad. I mean, he sent me like Brad is a friend. I love what he does. I love Chris. Please tell him I say hi and congrats on everything. And things are going well.
Absolutely. And also then later, I'm going to talk to Franco of Art and Franco, Tiny Titans,
nice.
Comics.
Yeah,
and he's got a brand new Dead Man all ages anthology, a horror anthology, just in time for Halloween.
Perfect.
He's very proud of the artists that he collected, and he wrote the book and everything. And it's Franco's one of my best friends in comics.
He's fantastic.
Great dude. Absolutely.
I say good luck with that too, and congrats.
I absolutely will. Have a great time in New York, man.
Thanks, man. I'm sorry you won't be there, but we'll catch up soon.
Absolutely, and truly, man. Let's not wait a year. You're always welcome back. You know that.
You got it. I promise, John.
Thanks, buddy. Great talking to Scott. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.